Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and of course, continuing on reviewing Halloweenish materials on the weekends. And that's right. It's obvious that I, of course, would be reviewing and talking about Tim Burton's third and final short film that he did while he was working at Disney. And this is what basically got Burton kicked out of Disney. You know, Disney gave him the boot after this, and yeah. But thankfully, years later, he would reunite with Disney, and, I guess, at that time, things were patched up and such between them, when it came to this, and yeah. Especially since, without this, this being an important part of, Tim Burton's history, and without this, because, where he would end up next, and he would get into, his movie-making career and so on. So again, this being an important piece of Tim Burton history right here, and thus I'm finally reviewing it. And if you guys remember or not, I did review the first two short films that Burton made. If you want to go check those out, the past Halloweenish reviews. So now I've come to the third and final one. That's right, and not to mention, it is celebrating its anniversary. I am finally reviewing from 1984, the original and live-action version of Frankenweenie. Yes, Frankenweenie. Yeah, just what can you say about the original Frankenweenie short film, from 1984, because, with this being the one short film where Disney would fire Burton, because, the original Frankenweenie, the 29-minute short film from 1984, because, it was considered dark and scary, for younger audiences, and, I can see why. I mean, I'm glad to have watched this before seeing the stop-motion full-length feature version of Frankenweenie, because, I think for a lot of us, we obviously saw this before the stop-motion film, as we all know today, because, like me, and I'm sure that goes for the rest of you guys, getting the, anniversary DVD of The Nightmare Before Christmas, and on disc 2, it contained two of Tim Burton's short films, this and Vincent, and no Hansel and Gretel, because, if you know the history of Tim Burton's Hansel and Gretel, and that being his lesser-known short film that he did. But again, I've done my review on that, and alongside with Vincent, again, if you want to go check out each of those reviews, each of my reviews of those two short films. But anyways, because nowadays, people would remember the short films that Tim Burton did, those of course being Vincent and Frankenweenie. But only the true hardcore Burton fans like me would know about not just Frankenweenie and Vincent, but also Hansel and Gretel. So like I said, this being his third and final short film, the one short film that where Disney gave him the boot, and, and to think, because a year after this, because Disney was disturbed and thought this was dark, look what would come next after this. The Black Cauldron? God. But, as I mentioned, without Frankenweenie, because, where Burton would go next after Frankenweenie, and when he was fired from Disney, Frankenweenie caught the eye of the late legendary Paul Rubens, and he handpicked Burton to direct the movie centering on his very own character, Pee Wee Herman, in Pee Wee's Big Adventure a year after Frankenweenie. And you know, just after Pee Wee's Big Adventure and after Burton did a little bit more work on television, well, when it came to Beetlejuice, and from there on, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. So again, Frankenweenie having a huge important part in the history of Burton, no doubt about it. But the first things I have to say about the live-action Frankenweenie, well, I mean, it is pretty good. You know, despite the fact, because, yeah, this being kind of creepy and dark and such, even because I was getting those feelings the very first time I watched this, that and alongside with Vincent. Because I think, you know, for some of us at a young age, we were kind of, like, creeped out and such by the intenseful stuff that was going on in each short films, Vincent and Frankenweenie. Yeah, well, you know, because Frankenweenie, in the case of Frankenweenie, because this being live action, and yeah, so, you know, and I recall, like, and I'm sure you guys would remember this, right before the short film started itself, the short film itself started, I mean, there was an introduction with, you know, with Tim Burton talking about Frankenweenie and teasing that a stop-motion full-length feature of Frankenweenie was in the works. Yeah, I recall that, even looking back, just, yeah. And, you know, around the time when the Nightmare Before Christmas anniversary DVD came out, it would be until a couple years later when the stop-motion Frankenweenie film would come out. And it's nice to see that for the bonus features of the 2011 Frankenweenie film, it does include, and rightfully so, the 1984 short film. Nice to see, and makes sense, of course. But yeah, again, I'm glad to have seen the 1984 Frankenweenie short film before the stop-motion one came out, especially at the right and perfect time, you know, and how old I was when that specific DVD of Nightmare came out, and containing this. Yeah, so. But, you know, I think because for this being 29 minutes, you know, and just, like, in comparison to this and the stop-motion film, well, I mean, there's a slight difference. I mean, in the stop-motion one, there's more story, but in this, well, with how much story that's in this one, the live-action specifically, and for this being only 29 minutes, well, I think for both, they work, and at that time when the live-action one was done, and, you know, this was, like, really the first time for Tim Burton, you know, where he had, like, big major stars in this at the time, yeah, which I will mention after I, you know, read the description / the story, and when I get into the short film itself. But yeah, just overall, 1984's Frankenweenie, for me, the first things I have to say about it, pretty good, and a very important piece in Tim Burton's career and the history of Tim Burton, all the same. So, yeah. Alright, so, as always, for me, read the description / the story. And this is very short, but, you know, still. A young boy sets out to revive his dead pet using the monstrous power of science. Okay, so getting into the short film itself, well, you know, because this being in black and white, you know, and just like how the 2011 stop-motion film is also, and with my review, well, because, you know, starting off with, like you know, a homemade movie being shown on, you know, a projection, and the main star of this this homemade movie is a dog named Sparky. I wonder, yeah, Sparky is credited, yeah. And, well, Sparky being played by Sparky. And there's another dog that was credited, but I'll get to that other dog when I get there. And with our cast of characters, well, the family and, well, their dog, Sparky, being the Frankensteins. Yes, very fitting, of course, and what a coincidence, right? So, the parents, Susan Frankenstein and Ben Frankenstein, both being played by the late Shelley Duvall and Daniel Stern. Now, a lot of us would know Daniel Stern best for his role as one of the wet bandits from the Home Alone films, mainly the first two. Marv, yeah, and, that memorable moment with the spider on his face. Yes, so before that, he was in something that was directed by Tim Burton. So, but of course, he's done a lot more than that. Come on, guys. He's done a lot more than just, say, known for being in Home Alone. But anyways, like I'm sure a lot of you would know that he was in this, right? Some of you. And by the way, because fun fact, Frankenweenie from 1984 was actually my first introduction to Shelley Duvall. And then something else that I knew her in, and before seeing it fully, well, obviously that'd have to be The Shining. And then Popeye came in later in my life, because knowing about the existence of that movie and that she played Olive Oyl. So yeah, well, that's pretty much two of her best-known roles in, two movies that she was in. And let's not forget to mention that Tim Burton would work with Shelley Duvall once again in Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater. Burton would direct an episode of her show, which that being Aladdin and His Wonderful Lamp, which I did my review on that episode if you want to go check that out. And, it is thanks to Shelley Duvall. She's one of those people that, helped, for Paul Rubens to, know the existence of Burton, so Shelley Duvall, so it is thanks to the late Shelley Duvall for, being one of those people that helped Burton, go into full-time, with his, future directing career, filmmaking career, etc. Okay, and then there's Victor Frankenstein, being played by young Barrett Oliver. And there's the standing ovation, then Susan offering everybody who attended chocolate chip cookies. And one of Victor's friends is Anne Chambers, being played by young Sophia Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. Yeah, I didn't realize until later on that, yeah, she's Francis's daughter and she was in something Burton. So that's cool. So then at one point, Victor playing ball with Sparky, and then at one point, because they're doing this right out in the road, where he's throwing the ball. When he throws it once again, well, an incoming car, he's hit, and he's killed off screen, and then the credits roll, and we, see shots of a pet cemetery, I assume, and we see Sparky's grave, and let's not forget to mention the guy who composed the music and score in this, David Newman. Yeah, and this is especially before what David Newman would go on to, do score and music for, for, say, The Brave Little Toaster, Ice Age, Galaxy Quest, Anastasia, Daddy Daycare, the list goes on. Yeah, before all that, he did the music and score for Tim Burton's Frankenweenie. And you know what? He was pretty good at that. Okay, so after the opening credits and, Sparky being laid to rest, well, things not looking too good for young Victor, and when one day going to school, one of his teachers, and attending to one of his teacher's classes, Mr. Walsh, being played by the late Paul Bartel, because basically the class is Mr. Walsh talking about, an X animal and showing an X frog and demonstrating on making an X frog move, and that, of course, being electricity and the flippers moving. All the students are grossed out by this. I don't blame them, of course. And something sparks in Victor's head, and thus he gets the idea. And because of how much he misses Sparky, if possibly, he can succeed on this, bringing Sparky back to life with electricity. So, and to speed things up, because, we see Victor collecting some stuff from the garage, getting different bits and pieces, whatever, and basically creating, this stuff putting all this stuff together to produce some electricity, and when an incoming thunderstorm approaches, even, like, one of the Frankenstein's neighbors, Mr. Chambers, being played by the late Joseph Mayer, yeah, I hope I'm saying his last name right, whom, by the way, would work with Burton once again, and alongside with Shelley Duvall in the Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater episode, Aladdin and His Wonderful Lamp. Yeah, he played the Sultan, so yeah, nice to see that he would, once again, and for the last time, work with Burton, so yeah. So yeah, he plays the neighbor, Mr. Chambers, and whom is also the father of Sofia Coppola's character, Anne, because, hence the last name Chambers, as I said. And unbeknownst to Victor's parents and everybody else on what he's doing and his plans to resurrect his dog, and thus going back to, his pet dog's grave, digging him up, taking him back to the house, and, well, thus preparing this contraption that he built up top of the attic, and thus, and just like in Frankenstein, because that's what this is, but, the twist is, and the difference is, I should say, it's a dog. So, yeah. Raising up this table and such that he placed his lifeless dog's body, and the thunderstorm happening, and with electricity being provided, and did it work? And as it's lowered back down, well, nothing yet, and Victor immediately assumes that it didn't succeed. But it does take a couple of seconds, and obviously, yeah. Well, we see that Sparky's tail is wagging, and thus, Sparky has come back to life. What Victor had done, he accomplished it. He succeeded on resurrecting and bringing back his pet dog to life. However, he has to keep Sparky, being seen by anybody and so on. And even Victor making an excuse to his parents, like, to miss out on school. Well, and he has to be there for Sparky in case, nothing will happen. He doesn't get out of the house and cause mayhem and so on, because you never know. So that's what happens. Like, Victor, he stays at home while his parents, they're off. I think, like, each of them going to work or something, I guess. And, like, one moment where Victor feeds Sparky some food and water, and when it comes to them drinking, well, with Sparky drinking, the water and such coming out of his body, just, and nice to see that in the stop-motion film, they did that, obviously, staying true to what the first Frankenweenie did, and thus recapturing those moments in the stop-motion film, obviously. Okay, but then at one point, a little later on, we see that Victor had fallen asleep, and then Sparky, he makes his way out of the house, and, wandering around the neighborhood, and, because, some of the other characters, like, there's Mrs. Epstein, yeah, being played by Roz Braveman, yeah, and there's also Frank Dale, being played by Jason Hervey, yeah, Mike Anderson, being played by Paul C. Scott, Mrs. Curtis, being played by Helen Ball, and I believe, yeah, because if I am correct, Mrs. Epstein, with black hair and, glasses, her dog, Raymond, and Raymond being credited as well, another dog that's credited, and Raymond being played by Rusty James. The dog actor has a last name, apparently. Well, I'm sure as though other dogs have last names, but anyways, well, because, they're family dogs. But anyway, so, at one point, her walking her dog Raymond, and Raymond smelling something, and that, of course, being Sparky, but she doesn't suspect anything. And then Sparky wandering his way into, a cabin in the backyard of Mr. Chambers, because Mr. Chambers looking for something. And, to talk more about Mr. Chambers, because he was curious on what was going on over at the Frankenstein's house and what Victor was doing, because when he threw the cat outside for the night, he can see what Victor was doing up top of the roof of the attic, so yeah, he was getting a bit suspicious. So yeah, at one point, again, Sparky making his way into the backyard of Mr. Chambers, causing to knock some stuff off and startling Mr. Chambers, and Mr. Chambers, you know, asking Mrs. Epstein, yeah, if, you know, he saw a dog too, and she apparently then says that the dog tried to attack her dog, Raymond, which Sparky didn't. And you know what? Because the neighbors, they just immediately accuse and think that Sparky did something, which he never did, okay? Not doing any harm and such to them, just, you know, snooping around and just wandering around, that's all. Even when, in like a clubhouse, or I'm pretty sure that's what it is, a little private place for Mr. Chambers' daughter, Anne, because we see her inside her little private clubhouse, whatever, and playing with her Barbies and Kens, and, well, Sparky at the window, we see a shadow through the curtains, she sees this, she screams, and yet Sparky didn't do anything. Seriously, come on. What do you think? Just... Anyways. And of course, yeah, Victor waking up to the sounds of Anne's screams, and it doesn't take him that long to know that, yeah, clearly, this would have to be Sparky. Okay, anyways, then when the parents return, and already, because Mr. Chambers and his daughter confronting them, and, you know, about them getting a new dog, but, you know, they say that they didn't get a new dog, and, you know, with the mentioning of Sparky, Ben Frankenstein goes up to investigate, and he can see, and by total shock, that, yeah, Sparky is right there with Victor. And, you know, Ben, you know, getting his wife, and after the conversation finishes between them and the Chambers, and even Mrs. Yeah, Epstein having a few words to say, while she's, you know, watering the grass, plants, just, yeah. Both of them going up to see in the attic that, yeah, Sparky is right there, plain sight, and, you know, just them asking and confronting Victor about all this, and, you know, what the risks of this, and just, yeah. And, well, because after that, and when everybody's in bed, and, you know, for Susan and Ben, talking about what to do next, and this just all of a sudden happening for them, just, yeah. One funny line that Mr. Frankenstein says that they can't punish Victor for resurrecting his dog. Well, no, because why? Just no reason to. Anyways, so basically, because they just, for now, they have to close the blinds and not have Sparky go out in, you know, broad daylight. Only, like, say, when taking him out for a walk and having to go to the bathroom at nighttime, late nighttime, and yeah. And then it doesn't take too long for everybody in the neighborhood to start staring at them, and because now everybody knows, not just the Chambers and Mrs. Epstein, but yeah. And that's when Ben Frankenstein gets the idea and mentions this to Victor, that maybe they should get everybody from the neighborhood together and they can meet Sparky and know that he's not a bad dog, he's still the same Sparky, etc. And, well, Victor going off to school, a few of his friends, they are aware of what's been going on, and yeah. And then later that night, well, because everybody from the neighborhood is there, you know, awaiting to meet Sparky, and Victor and his mom getting Sparky prepared and such, and Ben trying to, you know, keep the guests, you know, right at home with giving them snacks and stuff like that. And when it comes to them meeting Sparky, well, things escalate quickly. Literally, panic erupts. All hell, for no reason, breaks loose. Them panicking, Sparky scattering, just, you know, and some of the people freaked out, and thus, Sparky runs out of the house, makes a run for it, Victor on Sparky's tail, Victor's parents on Victor's tail, and the entire neighborhood, you know, the neighbors that attended to meet Sparky, pretty much on Sparky's tail. So yeah, and making their way to this, I forget the name of this specific place, and how, well, obviously it would be in the stop-motion Frankenweenie film. If I remember to do so, yeah, why not? I'll put the name of it in the text. You know what it is, but yeah, still, I'm going to put the name of it in a text. So, when everybody makes their way there, well, and in that place, and just like in the story of Frankenstein, a windmill. Sparky making his way into the windmill, and Victor as well. And one of the neighbors, when everybody makes their way there, and all of them surrounding the windmill, one of the neighbors accidentally setting the windmill on fire. I get what the guy was doing. He was, he lit up a match, a lighter, I should say, to see if, he can see anything inside of the windmill, but he slipped and accidentally, it slipped out of his hands. So, that's understandable. Nothing intentional. And so, yeah, it doesn't take too long for the windmill to catch, literally, blazing fire. Victor, at one point, is unconscious because he's knocked out, and how loyal Sparky is, saving Victor getting out of the windmill. But unfortunately, Sparky, he once again gets killed when parts of the windmill fall on top of him, and, fatal howl that we hear from Sparky, and now the neighbors can see that, yeah, Sparky is still the same Sparky, and he's not a bad dog, and he literally just saved Victor, and Mr. Chambers pointing that out. And so what happens next, the final sequence of the Frankenweenie short film, the neighbors, they help Victor bring Sparky back once again to life. And Mr. Chambers, shouting to everybody as they're preparing to bring him back to life, the kid brought the dog back to life once, we can do it again. And just, yeah, they basically use their cars and turning on, the car engines, starting up the car engines, wires attached to Sparky to bring him back to life, and, yeah, with the power of the car engines as they're starting up their cars, yeah, this does work, and Sparky is brought back to life once again. And right before it ends, Black Poodle Dog, yeah, approaching Sparky, and love at first sight, and Mrs. Epstein's comment on this, and, well, apparently, because this Black Poodle Dog now becomes the bride of Frankenweenie, obviously. And a little sparks from, the metal wires, attached to Frankenweenie, Sparky, that is, and a little bit of a spark and making the words "the end," and that's how it ends. That was a nice and great way to end it right there, for sure. Yeah, 1984's Frankenweenie, it's a memorable piece of Tim Burton material, and like I said, this being a very important piece of Tim Burton history in Tim Burton's career, and again, without this, what would come next for good old Tim Burton? For sure, yeah. The story to the original Frankenweenie was good. The casting and the characters, and for this only being 29 minutes and how much story this had in 29 minutes, it was done pretty well. And fast forward many years later, and in 2011, we would get a full-length feature film in stop motion of Frankenweenie, and more story that had to tell. And that did not disappoint either. Yeah. And with the music and score, the way that this was done with its design and look, well, obviously, because this is something Tim Burton, just, yeah, everything about 1984's Frankenweenie was pretty good. And I'm giving the original Frankenweenie, yeah, this sounds about right. I'm giving it, 8 out of 10 stars. Yes, 8 out of 10 stars for the original live-action short film of Frankenweenie. And what about you guys? What did you think of the original Frankenweenie itself from 1984? I'm sure a lot of you, yeah, any of you that got to see this before the stop-motion Frankenweenie film, I'm pretty sure, more than likely. And were you, at a young age, were you, kind of creeped out and such, and with what was going on in this, and yeah, any favorite moments, and just, yeah, overall, what do you think of 1984's Frankenweenie, the very first piece of Frankenweenie material in live action? Just, yeah. And with what I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the original / live-action version of Frankenweenie from 1984. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I'll see you guys in the next video / review. And of course, continuing on, reviewing Halloweenish materials on the weekends. Stay tuned, because the next Halloweenish material I'll be reviewing during the weekends, I'm not gonna give a tease and describe it. You'll just have to wait and see, okay? And for the rest to come, take care, happy anniversary to the original Frankenweenie, and peace out.